With the co-host of the Oz Cricket Pod, Paul Dennett. Good afternoon, Paul.
Good afternoon, guys. How you going?
Yeah, we're good. So, what is the feeling after that first? Is it feeling like a Glenn McGrath 5-0, or aren't you that confident yet?
No, we're actually a little bit pessimistic, strangely enough. On the news tonight, they had a montage of Stuart Broads' dismissals of David Warner in the 2019 Ashes. And there's a feeling that England with the pink ball, and now they're going to get 2 pink ball tests, our batters don't really handle the moving ball. So I think that some of us give you a chance. And strangely enough, and this sounds like traitorous talk, I and some people don't mind that because we really want a bit of a contest so that then if Australia ultimately do win, we can be much more satisfied rather than, 5-0 can sometimes be a bit hollow.
Your batters can't handle a moving ball. Nothing else can they? Let's be really honest. Yeah. The chances are that Warner might not play. There's a doubt, isn't there, over him?
Yeah, I mean, he got hit on the ribs from Ben Stokes, but he's a tough little guy, and I reckon he will play. Probably wearing a chest protector, which he probably should have had in the first instance. But there's some talk of Usman Khawaja coming in for him. But my tip is that we'll see David Warner out there, and the battle against Broad will be resumed.
But Hazelwood is out, isn't he?
He is, and this is an opportunity for you guys to be a bit pessimistic because his replacement may be better than all of them. Jai Richardson has had a lot of injury problems, but he is quick and he's kind of got his body back together. I saw him live at the Wacker a few years ago, and I was very glad to be sitting in the stands. His record is, extraordinary. He's another one off the production line of fast bowlers that we've somehow managed to develop.
Yeah, it just makes us miss Jofra Archer even more, really.
Such a shame.
Such a shame he couldn't be there.
Yeah. What's the feeling about the England team out there? What have they? I mean, Burns, I would imagine, has taken a fair bit of heat, isn't he?
The Australian newspaper today devoted an entire article to mocking his technique.
Wow.
It was
it's not a surprise,
quite humorous.
Yeah, because it's what technique? It's not a technique, is it?
Well, to be fair to him, I mean, he's got some runs. That's the thing, that you can look as ugly as you want. And, his record's not actually bad. And to be fair to the article, it did conclude by saying that they showed some respect for him after about 400 words of dismissing his technique with quite poetic, the language was quite beautiful at times. But then they finished by sort of saying he's so ugly he makes Steve Smith's technique look like Mark Ward's. But then they did acknowledge that he actually is a pretty decent player.
Yeah, the only thing is when he does make runs, he's often being dropped 3 or 4 times. So I'm just not convinced at all, but there we go. But often it's said, is this the worst England team ever to visit Australia? But they say that every time, don't they, really?
Yeah, it's like a tradition. They said that with the Australian side that went over in 89 and Australia won convincingly. It's certainly not the worst team. I'm old enough to remember some of those teams from the early mid-90s. This team would destroy them. So I think that the fast bowling group that you've got is enough that with the pink ball, England could definitely win if they get the better of conditions, which they had in the first test. If only they'd won the toss and bowled, I think they would have won.
Yeah, that's interesting. They may well have done, I agree.
And I take it there was surprise at your end as well that Stuart Broad wasn't there for that first test?
Delighted surprise that this notion of not only David Warner, but Marcus Harris, the other opener, is a left-hander, Travis Head in the middle order, Alex Carey, so many left-handed players in our side, that Stuart Broad going around the wicket to them. That was the other thing, that they only bowled about a quarter of the balls to Warner around the wicket at all. And that was what he couldn't lay a bat on in 2019. So, delighted that they chose to bat, and also delighted that Ben Stokes kept on bowling no balls.
Okay, and what about the 2 factors that really always often decide a game, the pitch and the weather?
The weather is going to be hot and dry. That's the beauty of Adelaide in summer, unlike where I live in Sydney, where it's kind of it can rain at any time of the year. Adelaide kind of has its rain in the winter, so I think it's going to be hot and dry. And as for the pitch, Adelaide used to be the best place to bat in the world, but with the pink ball, because they're so worried about it getting kind of knocked out of shape, they've kept a lot of grass on it in recent years. So the actual pink ball tests at Adelaide have gone really, really quickly. So the expectation is that it could be over in 3 days.
We're making quite a lot of the fact that it is a day-nighter, and we hope that will suit Anderson and Broad. I mean, a couple of our bowlers have never played a day-night Test match. I mean, what's the feeling there, that it gives England a bit of an edge because of those guys?
Yeah, definitely. And I think that it also is just a bit of a lottery. That I think there's a feeling, in all honesty, that this Australian side, in Australian conditions, is probably a better side than England. So it should win. But when you have these conditions where it's not even always at night where it's so hard. Last summer, Australia bowled India out for 36 in the first session when it looked perfectly good for batting. But that's the sort of strange things that have happened in day-night Test matches in Adelaide in the past, where a couple of hours the pitch will look flat and nothing will be doing, and then when wickets fall, they fall in a massive clump. So with Anderson and Broad, especially, but also whichever other ones they choose, whether it's Robertson, Wokes, Wood, and Stokes, they're a threat. Our lineup's a threat as well, but I think the day-night Test brings it much more even.
With our batting, I dream of 36. Sounds like a good score. No, you never know. You've got to stay optimistic.
No, you have got to stay optimistic. And what about the sort of COVID restrictions in Adelaide, Paul? I mean, we're going to see decent crowds there?
That's a very good question. The thing with each day, we have 6 states, and the jurisdictions change day in, day out. I think that we will see pretty decent crowds in there, but not the huge crowds that we might have. And it's also misleading at Adelaide because they have this, it's a bit like Lords, they have this massive section behind the stands where sometimes they'll report the crowd as 48,000 and you look and there's no one there. And they'll show behind the stands there's 10,000 people drinking beer and enjoying themselves in the marquee and not actually watching the cricket. So I think it'll be a decent crowd, but not as big as in previous years, and also missing most of the England fans as well.
Yeah. And I just see finally Cricket Australia selling tickets for the Tasmania Test now, that 5th Test, another day-nighter. I mean, I imagine there's a fair bit of excitement there that they've got a test.
In Tasmania, I think it's going to be, without doubt, the biggest sporting event they've ever had. And apologies to any Tasmanians, it might be the biggest event they've ever had in the history of the state. And the government basically has underwritten the cost, the difference in money that they would have made had they been in Melbourne. They desperately want an Australian rules football team in Tasmania, and the Australian Football League just keeps on saying, no, you're not big enough, no, you're not big enough. So this is the sort of thing that they want to be able to put themselves on the map, and so it should be a wonderful atmosphere, except the fact that I think that it might get down to about 5 degrees at night.
Yeah, we've been told that it's a bit wetter, a bit greener, and gets a bit colder there, doesn't it? We've been told that can be the case.
It's basically England in Australia.
Yeah, excellent. Well, look, Paul, it's been lovely to talk to you. I hope you really do not enjoy the second test in the nicest possible way, and we'll catch up with you again, no doubt. Thanks very much for joining us.
Great stuff. Thanks, guys.
There we are, the co-host of the Oz Cricket Pod, Paul Dennett.